Sacrifice, by Munshi Premchand. A person's status is largely affected by their name. Since Mangu Thakur became a constable, his name has changed to Mangalsingh. Now, no one dares to call him Mangu. Since Kallu Ahir befriended the police officer and became the village head, his name has become Kalka Din. Now, if anyone dares to call him Kallu, he glares at them angrily. In the same way, Harkh Chand is now simply known as Harkhu. 20 years ago, he used to manufacture sugar and farmed multiple fields. His business was thriving. But when foreign sugar started arriving, it caused him so much loss that gradually, his factory crumbled, his plows broke, his business collapsed, his land diminished, and he himself fell apart. Now, this 70-year-old man sits on a cot with a pillow, sipping coconut water. These days, he carries a basket of manure on his head to spread in the fields. However, despite all this, there is still a sense of pride in his demeanor, grace on his face, and dignity in his speech, unaffected by the blows of time. As they say, the rope may burn, but its twists remain. A person's noble past always leaves a lasting mark on their character. Harkhu now has only 5 bighas of land left, just 2 oxen, and cultivates with a single plough. Yet, in the village's disputes and meetings, his opinions are still valued, and he speaks with an impartial, honest voice. The younger generation in the village cannot dare to challenge him. Harkhu has never taken medicine in his life, although he frequently fell ill. Every year, when the malaria fever hit in the month of Quar, September to October, Harkhu would be the first to be affected. But after a week or 10 days, he would recover without taking any medication. This time too, he fell ill as usual and refused to take medicine. However, this fever had come with the decree of death. A week passed, 2 weeks passed, a month passed, but Harkhu still didn't get up from his cot. Now he began to feel the need for medicine. His son Girdhari tried various home remedies like neem extracts and the root of gadborna, but nothing helped. One day, Mangalsingh the constable came to visit Harkhu to inquire about his health. The poor old man was sitting on his broken cot, chanting the name of God. Mangalsingh said, "Baba, this illness won't go away without medicine. Why don't you take quinine?" With calm resignation, Harkhu replied, "Then bring it for me." The next day, Kalka Din visited and said, "Baba, take some medicine for a few days. Your body no longer has the strength to recover without it." Harkhu gave him the same calm response, "Then bring it for me." But these visits were merely formalities, lacking any genuine sympathy. Neither Mangalsingh nor Kalka Din followed up, and no one else did either. Harkhu continued to lie in his veranda, absorbed in his thoughts. When Mangalsingh passed by, Harkhu would say, "Brother, you didn't bring the medicine." Mangalsingh would avoid him. Kalka Din would appear, and Harkhu would ask the same question. But he too would avert his gaze and walk away. Perhaps it never occurred to Harkhu that medicine requires money, or maybe he valued money more than his own life. Or perhaps he held a fatalistic belief that when his time came, the illness would go away on its own. He never mentioned the cost, and so the medicine never came. His condition worsened, and after suffering for 5 months, he passed away on the day of Holi. His son Girdhari gave him a grand funeral, performed all the rites, and fed the Brahmins of several villages. The entire village mourned. No holy celebrations took place. There were no colors, no drums, no drinking of bhang. Some people quietly cursed the old man, wondering why he had to die on that day. He could have waited a couple of days. But no one had the shamelessness to celebrate amidst the grief. This was not the city where people are indifferent to one another, where the cries of neighbors barely reach your ears. Girdhari said, "No, sir, you have been very generous to me. You have always shown me kindness. But such a large tribute is beyond my means. I am your humble servant. As long as I live in this land, I will remain your loyal servant. I will sell my oxen and somehow manage to present 50 rupees. But I cannot possibly give more than that. God has blessed you with plenty, please be satisfied with that." Omkar Nath was displeased by Girdhari's refusal. In his opinion, he had already been too lenient with him, more than any other landlord would be. He replied, "You must think we take this money and enjoy a lavish life. But you have no idea what we endure. Donations here, tributes there, gifts and honors elsewhere, it all takes a toll on us. Then there are additional handouts, those who don't receive them sulk. I'm constantly troubled by these matters. From morning till night, I run around bungalows, flattering officials. The things my children long for, I must put in these gifts. If I don't do this, it would create huge problems. Sometimes the law officer arrives, sometimes the tax collector, or even the deputy's entourage. If I don't entertain them, I'll be labeled a fool. Every year, I spend 1,000 or 1,200 rupees on these obligations. Where is all that money supposed to come from? Then there are household expenses. Sometimes I just want to leave this life behind. This land is a burden, a constant struggle to please the officials. If not for this land, I would leave and earn an honest living somewhere else, sleeping peacefully at night. We landlords are made by God to squeeze the poor. That is our fate. On one hand, we extract money, and on the other, we give it away with tears in our eyes. But you people think it all stays with us. I am giving you a significant concession, yet you are still not satisfied. Well, that's your choice. But know this, there will be no more concessions on the tribute. The month of Chat is almost over. If you don't pay within a week, you won't be allowed to plow your fields, and I'll make other arrangements." Girdhari returned home disheartened and hopeless. He had no way of arranging 100 rupees. He thought, if I sell both oxen, what's the point of even having land? Who would buy my house? And selling it would disgrace my ancestors. We have a few trees, but they would only fetch about 25 to 30 rupees, no more. If I ask for a loan, who will lend me money? I already owe the grocer 50 rupees for my father's feast, and he won't give me another penny. I have no jewelry to sell either, the only piece of jewelry I had, a necklace, is already with the grocer. A whole year has passed, and I haven't been able to get it back. Girdhari and his wife Subgi were constantly lost in thought, trying to find a solution, but none came. Girdhari couldn't eat or sleep properly. He felt a heavy burden on his heart all the time. The thought of losing the fields sent a sharp pain through him. How could someone else enjoy the land we've cultivated for 20 years, the land we nourished with manure, leveled with care, and fenced with our own hands? The fields had become a part of his life. Every inch of the land was soaked in his blood, sweat, and tears. He could name each field as if they were his own children. There was the *Chobiso* field, the *Biso* field, the one near the stream, and the one in the *Telia* area. These names would instantly bring vivid images of the fields to his mind. He spoke of the fields as if they were living beings. His hopes, dreams, and future were all tied to these fields. Without them, he couldn't imagine life. Now they were slipping out of his hands. He would wander out of the house in a state of despair and sit for hours on the field's boundary, crying as if bidding them a final farewell. A week passed, and Girdhari still couldn't arrange the money. On the 8th day, he learned that Kalka Din had paid 100 rupees in tribute and had taken the fields for 10 rupees per bigha. Girdhari sighed deeply, and his eyes welled up with tears. A moment later, he broke down, sobbing uncontrollably while calling out to his ancestors. The household was in turmoil. That day, no food was cooked in the house. It felt as if someone had died, as if they were mourning a death in the family. But Subgi wasn't one to easily surrender to fate. She was a fighter, often winning verbal battles. She believed that words could cut through any obstacle, and they would work in this situation too. She wasn't the type to give up and leave things to fate. Filled with anger, she went to Kalka Din's house and fiercely confronted his wife. "Yesterday's laborer is today's landlord. Let's see who dares to plow my fields. If anyone tries, I'll make sure our blood mixes with theirs. They think money makes them powerful. I'll show them otherwise." The neighbors supported her. She's right. We shouldn't let this arrogance go unchecked. Just because God gave them wealth doesn't mean they should trample on the poor. Subki felt victorious, but it was like stirring water in a storm, uprooting trees from their roots. She sat in a neighbor's house, venting her grief and picking fights with Kalka Din's wife, while Girdhari sat at his doorstep, despondent, thinking about what would become of him now. How would he get through life? Where would his children go? The thought of becoming a laborer filled his heart with pain. After living a life of respect and independence for so long, the idea of becoming a laborer was worse than death to him. Up until now, he was a respected landowner in the village, involved in village matters, and his home was modest but dignified. The barber, carpenter, water carrier, priest, and watchman all respected him. But now, where would that respect go? Who would come to his door now? Who would listen to him? Now he would have to become a laborer, working for others just to fill his belly. He thought about the days when he would wake up early to tend to his oxen, plowing the fields while singing songs, drenched in sweat but never feeling tired. He would be filled with pride when he looked at his flourishing fields. At harvest time, he felt like the king of the world, seeing the piles of grain before him. But now, who would bring in the grain? Who would fill the granary? Those golden days were gone. His doorstep would now be deserted, with dust swirling and dogs wandering about. His eyes would long to see his beloved oxen, but they would be gone. The house, once full of life, would now be empty. Villagers gathered and searched everywhere, but there was no sign of Girdhari. There was still a glimmer of hope, so she didn't break her bangles or go into mourning. Evening came, and darkness fell. Subki placed a lamp at the head of Girdhari's cot and sat by the door, staring out. Her baby girl was asleep, and her little boy was stubbornly insisting that she call for his father. Suddenly, Subki felt the presence of someone walking. Her heart leapt with joy, and she rushed to the door, but the cot was still empty. She stepped outside, her heart pounding. She saw Girdhari standing by the oxen's trough, his head bowed, silently crying. Subki called out, "Come inside." "What are you doing out there? You've worried us all day." She hurried toward him, but Girdhari didn't respond. He stepped back and disappeared into the darkness. Subki let out a scream and fainted. The very next morning, Kalka Din Mahato took his plough to a new field. It was still dark as he yoked his oxen when he suddenly noticed Girdhari standing on the field's edge, wearing the same coat and turban, his head bowed. Kalka Din called out, "Hey, Girdhari, what are you doing here? Your poor wife is worried sick. Where are you coming from?" As he approached, Girdhari stepped back and jumped into the nearby well. Kalka Din screamed and ran back to the village. He didn't tell his ploughman what he had seen, but the next day, he sent one of them, Jingur, to that same field. Evening came, and everyone's oxen returned home, but Jingur didn't. When night fell, Kalka Din grew anxious and, with a few other villagers, went to the field. They found Jingur unconscious, lying next to the plough, with his oxen collapsed nearby. They tried to revive Jingur but to no avail. They carried him back to the village, where the oxen's legs were found bleeding. It was clear that when Jingur had collapsed, the oxen had struggled in the harness, cutting themselves on the plough blades. Jingur muttered deliriously all night, but by morning, he regained consciousness. He said he had seen Girdhari standing by the well, called out to him multiple times, but Girdhari didn't respond. When he approached, Girdhari jumped into the well. Jingur couldn't remember what happened after that. The entire village was abuzz with rumors. Everyone had their own version of the story. But from that day on, Kalka Din never returned to those fields, and the path was avoided after dark. It's been 6 months since this incident. Girdhari's eldest son now works at a brick kiln and brings home 10 or 12 annas every day. He now wears a shirt and English shoes. The family now eats vegetables twice a day, and instead of millet, they cook wheat and rice. But in the village, his status has fallen, he's just a laborer now. Subki has lost her former spirit and vitality. The spark of disaster has turned to ash. Now, she can barely hold herself together and hides away like a stray dog in a strange village. She no longer attends the village councils or commands respect in anyone's home. She has become a helpless woman, but Girdhari's last rites have still not been performed. The hope is gone, but his memory remains. Kalka Din has now abandoned Girdhari's fields because his spirit is said to still wander there. Though Girdhari's ghost doesn't harm anyone, it watches over the fields, finding solace in the sight of them.